Welcome back to another edition of the Miami Dolphins in Depth podcast. I am your host, Miami Dolphins columnist Omar Kelly, and I am joined right now from Cell Block 39, Barry Jackson. Welcome, Barry. We were out there for practice number 8.
Yes, I'm back in my cell block now. I do get a half hour of outdoor activity today, but I'm in solitary confinement the rest of the day. But I'll emerge again from the cell block tomorrow morning to join you at Hard Rock Stadium for the practice. We can't call it a scrimmage. We're going to get in big trouble if we call it a scrimmage. Practice tomorrow. We're talking about practice.
Yes, it's work release, Barry. You get work release to come out and work. Listen, today was an interesting day at practice. There were a lot of flags. I'm actually going to put Mike McDaniel in my stock down because you know whose responsibility is to clean up their team. It's Mike McDaniel. And there were so many legal procedures, false starts.
Offsides.
Offsides. I don't know if we got an official flag count, but I'm thinking at least 9. This is what the refs are there for. I was a little surprised that there weren't refs in the first week. I'm sorry. I know it costs money because I used to aspire to be a referee. It costs money to have refs out there practice. Steve Ross spares no expense, Barry. What expense has he ever spared? Yeah. For you to go the first week and then not have refs there, and then we've seen since refs have been there this week, we've seen flags all 2 days.
It's been disruptive. I just wonder if the refs trying to justify the money they're being paid to be there. Because if this were an actual game, it would have been a 5.5-hour game with the amount of flags we had. But we saw another false start with Patrick Paul. We've seen at least 3. He did have some good moments, which we'll get to, obviously, over the next few days. But there were just a bunch of offsides that were very disruptive today. Yeah,
definitely. And false starts, offsides, illegal motion. It has to get cleaned up. It will. This is week 2 of training camp. They're going to end week 2 with the not scrimmage, but the practice in the stadium, Hard Rock Stadium. Obviously, for those who live in South Florida, the weather is coming. Tropical storm. It's not a hurricane, but it's going to leave bands of rain. The Dolphins will the scrimmage. Sorry, I say scrimmage. I'm up.
Yeah, shame on you.
It's shame on me. The practice is going to begin at 11 o'clock at Hard Rock Stadium. Obviously, fans can attend. You could select your seats. In the morning, check, because we will know if they're going to move it inside, cancel and move inside because of weather. But more than likely, it's going down. The one thing that I did notice in a top standout for me during practice was actually something that somebody who did not participate in practice, and that is Jaelan Phillips. Now, yesterday, we saw him doing some major full length of the field sprints, half length of the field sprints, and he was running fast. Probably the fastest I've ever seen a defensive lineman run. I'm trying to think about who can run that fast, and I really got nobody for you, which is part of the reason why Jaelan Phillips, when he was coming out of college, was the number 1 recruit in the nation when he decided to play for UCLA. But yesterday, that's one thing. And then, Barry, you know me. And what did I say to you before we even went to practice? I said, until I see him moving laterally, I'm not paying any attention to it.
Right. But we saw some today, which you're going to get into. An encouraging sign today of lateral activity.
An encouraging sign of lateral activity. He was doing some position drills with I'm going to mention a name. And I don't know if you know this, Barry, even though you know everything. Do you remember Sam Brenner?
Yes. Yeah, name from several years ago.
I think it's Joe Philbin era. Offensive lineman, center, went on to play for Denver. You realize he's been back as a trainer for the Miami Dolphins for the last 2 years, correct?
And he was with Jaelan Phillips today.
He was with Jaelan Phillips today doing some pretty aggressive rehab work. Fortunately, I was out there on the field because I like to work with the photographers and I like to get a field level view of what's going on in terms of movement skills. And it was right in front of me, Barry, and I could not just obsess. There was one-on-ones was going on, and I'm watching Jaelan Phillips drop back in coverage. Jaelan Phillips, doing these lateral drills. And I have been a skeptic, a pessimist, Very adamant about Jaelan Phillips needs to be put on the PUP. Why waste a roster spot? Give yourself the opportunity to stash a player and not rush him. And I have been very cautious with Jaelan Phillips, rushing him out on the field, and a non-believer that he was going to be available for the September 8th season opener against the Jacksonville Jaguars. However, the movement that I saw today hints to me that he might be 2 weeks away from practicing. And I'm being conservative by saying 2 weeks away from practicing. I'm thinking, hell, if he pushes and advocates for it, he might be practicing next week. Now, would I take him out of bubble wrap and take him out of PAP? No. But Jaelan Phillips is very adamant about him playing in the season opener.
Yeah, he's been clear on that since April. He told ESPN on the sideline of the UM game, I'm going to be back for the season. And think how much better you would feel about the edge rusher position on September 8th against Jacksonville, knowing now that Quentin Bell is a player. We're not saying he's all world, but he is a player. He can play. And knowing that Agba has come back in good shape, picked right up where he left off in the old defense, not the defense that Vic Fangio ran. So those two, having Jaelan Phillips maybe on a snap count in week one, and then Chop Robinson as your fourth end rather than your first or second end in week one of the season, if Bell continues to outplay him, I would feel a little bit better about the edge position for week one than we would have felt if Jaelan Phillips was still slow playing this, which obviously he's not. He wants to get back as quickly as possible. But I'm with you. I think seeing him opening day is now very much realistic.
Yeah, I funny because I just talked to Brent Grimes. Hate to name drop, but that's
good stuff. Though same injury.
Yeah, same injury. Suffered it in September. I asked Brent, "What is the toughest challenge of coming back from that Achilles?" And he said, to quote, "Building the strength back in the leg, because when you're in that boot and you're out of that boot and you're not working on that leg, you lose a lot of strength. That's the biggest challenge." Well, Jaelan has clearly built the strength back in that legs. And then working on your explosion and the explosive movements that you need. And he said, doing it on one leg, doing those explosive movements, which is what you have to do in football on one leg, that's the biggest challenge. But he did warn, you don't want to rush yourself, but you also don't want to baby the injury. Because if you don't trust the procedure, if you trust the procedure, then your Achilles should be fine and you shouldn't have to worry about it rupturing again. But if you baby the injury, it's going to take much longer. Clearly, Jaelan Phillips is not babying the injury. This is a guy who has been plagued his entire career by injuries. He's a player who has admitted he's had mental challenges in terms of like staying optimistic and, not letting the situation overwhelm him. And clearly, his mind is made up. I'm going to be there for the season opener. Now, if it happened, it would put the Dolphins in a very beneficial situation for what you said. It would take some of the pressure off Chop Robinson to be the edge center. And I know everybody, my opinion on Chop Robinson is not a very popular one. I'm used to this. I've been doing this since Koamisi, when I wouldn't say his name. I just called him 55 because Dolphins just needed him to be a star, and I wouldn't say he was a star. Chop Robinson is very dynamic at getting off the ball. Chop Robinson is very fast. Chop Robinson has the ability to be a threat on pass rushing downs. But what I am not willing to say is Chop Robinson can set an edge. And to me, and every coach, including Ryan Crow, his position coach, I've been doing this a very long time. If you play on the edge, you have to be able to set the edge. Otherwise, nobody needs to throw the ball because you can't stop the run. And that is where there's a huge, tremendous room for improvement from Chop Robinson. And I'm not saying he looks like trash doing it. He just doesn't look good doing it.
Yeah, he's not Charles Harris, but he's going to need time. And I think any speculation that he was going to come in as a starter with Phillips and Chubb coming back from injuries, I think it seems unlikely to me, barring him making tremendous strides against the run as an edge setter in preseason. It would seem more likely that it would be a combination of Phillips, obviously if healthy in week one, Quentin Bell and Agba, and then maybe Chop Robinson in third down spots. And I'm not projecting Grayson Murphy to be in the rotation, but he made a couple more plays today. And remember, the UCLA undrafted rookie, more pressures on the quarterback than any player in April's draft. over 4 years at North Texas and UCLA. He was again in the defensive backfield a couple times today. Kamara has flashed. So they have five without Phillips, but 6 edge players who at least you'll be able to use some early in the season. But you need Phillips in week 1 against Jacksonville. You especially need him week 2 against Buffalo, right? And then in Seattle is going to create challenges in week 3. So I guess the question with Phillips, Omar, is this. As you noted today on Twitter, if you take him out of PUP and he has a setback, you can't put him back. So when is the right time to take him out? Obviously, that'll be a trainer decision in part.
It's funny that you say that, Barry, because while if you take him off, you can't put him back. But what you can do is use one of your 8 IR spots for him, and it's the same timeline. But then you lose a roster spot. So this is a very tricky situation here. And you know what would alleviate the pressure, Barry?
What?
If Chop could actually set the edge. And here's Anthony Weaver, Dolphins defensive coordinator, who was an edge setter in his career. That was his specialty. Here's him addressing Chop's abilities when it comes to setting the edge.
Young player, still trying to learn some of the finer techniques and fundamentals of the game. But you see his athleticism and his skill set. And what I love most about the kid is just his intent when he comes to work. He's quiet, right? He's not one of those rookies that are out talking all this stuff and then not backing him up on the field. You can see him just contemplating every single thing that's being given to him and try to see what bits and pieces he can take from people to use with his game.
How do you get better as an edge setter? I mean, that was kind of your primary job in the league.
Yeah.
What do you do? Is it hand placement? Is it just anchoring down? What do you do to get better as an edge setter?
Yeah. For me, setting the edge to me is like a non-negotiable, right? In terms of getting better at it, I think because you operate with time and distance and you don't know where that guy's going to go, but if you run a straight line and somebody's trying to move laterals, if I'm a defensive end, right? That's what needs to happen for that guy to get to me. Then I should knock him back and set the edge. It's no different than like if you're going like this, I go straight ahead, like I'm going to knock you backwards. So I tell guys like, listen, roll off the ball, pick your aim and point, play with good leverage, play with hands, lock the guy out, and get ready for that ball to come back. And fortunately for us, I don't think there's a single outside back or a defensive end who doesn't understand that responsibility and isn't able to get that done.
Yeah. As you've heard, Barry, what was the word he used? Non-negotiable.
Yes.
So it is what it is. I mean, I've been doing this long enough to know it doesn't matter what the coach is, what the scheme is. If you can't set the edge, you cannot play at that position, at least not on early down. So let's hope that Chop continues to progress, makes tremendous strides in that arena. But another guy who's making tremendous strides, Barry, it's Ethan Bonner, who right now, depending on whether or not Justin Fuller is practicing. Did I say his name right? Fuller? Which one is he? Kendall Fuller. Kendall Fuller, yes. Depending on whether or not Kendall Fuller is practicing, Ethan Bonner is getting a tremendous amount of run. He's working with the starters. It's too late for me to take that back now. He is. And up until yesterday, where he was bad, he's had a respectable day. Yesterday was bad, but today he rebounded a little bit. He got an interception on a pass that Tua shouldn't have thrown. He was already
Hail Mary type to Tyreek late in practice, but still he made the play on the ball, so give him credit for that. He's had a good camp, except for yesterday. He's been really good, and I'm gaining some level of trust in him as your top backup boundary, but I think we need to see more, right?
Yeah, we need to see the exhibition season. I mean, it's hard to evaluate these cornerbacks when they're going against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And then a lot of the times, and I say this because not a lot of people realize this, but Tyreek shows up 50 minutes into practice, and he's been inside in the air condition. Guys like Ethan Bonner, who's part of special teams, he's been grinding for the last hour. His hydration level is low. And then you got to run against Tyreek, the fastest man in the NFL, who's fresh. He's got fresh legs. Now, in that defense, life is not fair. So it is what it is. These are the cards that you're dealt, Ethan Bonner. And even Jalen Waddle got a 15-minute AC break today And understand, I'm not complaining about any of that because we all know who those guys are and we know what we want to see. I don't need to see any of them doing one-on-ones or individual drills or 7-on-7s. I want to see them working in 11-on-11s and developing chemistry with Tua. But Ethan I would put him on my list if I had a list of the top 10 guys who've impressed me in training camp thus far after 8 practices. Ethan Bonner would be on that list, if not in the top 5. Where would you stack him up, Aaron?
I definitely have him in my top 5. Obviously, Quentin Bell has been the other real surprising player in camp. I asked the secondary or the new cornerbacks coach, Rafael Araujo, who replaced Sam Madison. He was promoted from assistant to the
Matthew Araujo.
Matthew, exactly. If I was thinking of a former Marlins player, forgive me. I asked him today if
there are a lot of former Marlins players, Barry. There are a lot since they keep having player skills.
So I asked the new quarterbacks coach today if Chris Greer were to come up to you and say, "Do you feel comfortable with what you have cornerbacks 3 through 6 on this team among obviously Kader Kohu, Nick Needham, Ethan Bonner, Saran Neal, Cam Smith, and 3 undrafted rookies? Are you going to tell him I don't know yet because I need to see preseason games?" Or are you going to tell him something else? And his answer was, I'm going to 100% tell him that we have enough here. The talent we have, the development we've shown, we're playing against the top offense every single day. We're holding our own. Now, every coach is going to express confidence in his players, but it's interesting. I gave him the option of saying we don't know yet, and instead he took the tact of, no, we have enough. Now, obviously, it's not clear to the rest of us that they have enough. We haven't seen nearly enough of Cam Smith.
I'm going to say, I don't believe you.
Yeah. So Bonner, he said, Bonner's done an absolutely amazing job with everything. The main thing with him is that his technique has improved. He's made incredible strides, even beyond the speed. Tyreek, of course, says he's the second fastest player on the team. He said, I cannot even tell you what Ethan Bonner's ceiling is because he's getting better every day, and I don't see that slowing down. So that's interesting, and something that you reminded me of the other day, the fact that Waddle volunteered the fact that Bonner is making him and Tyreek Hill better. You can't have more compliments of a second-year undrafted player than that, right? I mean, that struck me as something that was very telling. I want to mention one other quick thing from my conversation with the cornerbacks coach. With Kohu, I said, obviously, rookie, did a good job, 80.7 passer rating in his coverage area. Last year struggled, was up to 133.4 in his coverage area. I asked him, did you review Cater's tape of all of his plays last year and come up with anything mechanically that he did not do well that needs to be corrected? And he said, yes, there were things technically that they've worked on him with. He said, this is still the same guy as the rookie. I guess he was a revelation really as a rookie coming in as an undrafted player from a small school. He said the same player is there with Kader Kohu. My whole thing with him is nothing has changed about him in his football ability. From 2022 to 2023, it actually improved. So what can we do to build up the guy's confidence and get him back to that level? So that's been one of his pet projects. And I think how Kohu plays this year will shape how we view this new cornerbacks coach and whether this was a good move to replace Sam Madison with basically his number 2 guy.
Yeah. And Matthew Araujo.
I'm going to practice that all night.
Yeah. Yeah. He's I know from talking to players, he's a very popular coach on that staff. Other teams tried to pursue him from Miami this year. Miami had to elevate him in order to keep him. And, he addressed his unit, who he's younger than some of the players in it. So this is going to be a process where maybe the team's learning from one another. And here he is.
All this way, but they've had a lot of experience doing it other ways. So they come in, we talk about it, and the safety will be like, I'm going to play this here so you can be more aggressive, whatever the situation may be, but it's everyone playing off of each other. And when we do that, we play fast, we know where our help is. That's how we create those turnovers and different things. So I think it's really controlling what we can control and getting better as a unit, and then all of the other stuff's going to come from that. But we're not really focusing on specifics that way. It's more do what we can do. All the results are going to come from that.
This team could have, this team could possibly have 3 Hall of Famers in Tyreek, Calais, and Jalen Ramsey. What does Jalen Ramsey bring to this secondary on and off the field as a future Hall of Fame?
Absolutely. Jaelan is phenomenal. I'm sure you guys can see just from where you are at practice, his energy, how deliberate he is every single day. He's a coach on the field along with a lot of other guys. And at the end of the day, players look up to players. So for those young guys, having somebody who's done it at such a high level and continues to every single day is huge for them. And when he steps between those lines, you see why, he is who he is. He takes it over, and his deliberateness, his intensity every single day, that's what helps lead this defense and lead this team. So having that is an unbelievable advantage for us. Off the field is the same thing. In the meeting room, as we're watching film, talking and giving examples that he's seen in the past, different ways he's played things. And, we just try to give the guys as many tools as they can in their toolbox. And then it's up to them to apply, based within the rules of what we're doing in each scheme, to apply those tools. And having guys who have done things different ways really successfully, they can add to that conversation. So it's been great for us.
With Ethan Bonner, what have you seen in terms of the jump that he's made in this game from last year, where he was an undrafted rookie fighting to make this team, to where he is now, where he's kind of holding on to a prominent role?
Yeah. Ethan Bonner, as you said, last year he came in and he was getting his feet under him. And as he progressed throughout the year, he got to a place at the end of the year where we're in a playoff game and he gets minutes and he makes a lot of great plays. And through that whole process, what developed for him was his confidence. And I think he got to a place where he felt like, I can do this. I know I can do this. You always have that inside of you as an NFL player, but it's like once you get to do it, it's like, cool, I checked that box now. I've experienced it. So what we wanted to do is take that and now apply that to his confidence in developing his technique. So now it's every day, what can we do to develop your game? Not only your actual footwork, your technique, but also your understanding of the game, how to anticipate things. And now he's putting all that together, and you see him being able to make plays and really advancing. So there's no ceiling, there's no anything. It's just him progressing every day and getting better, along with all of his teammates pushing him and him pushing them. So he's been doing everything that we've asked him to do, and he's been doing phenomenal at it.
Now, we have been, in fairness, all of us in the media, we've had having love fest with, Quentin Bell and the Ethan Bonners and the Julian Hills and all these undrafted players. But the reality is, we'll get a reality check next week when the Atlanta Falcons get here. And so we'll see if these players pass the sniff test. So, we got a long process to go, but right now it seems as if it's not too big, or the stage is not too big. What I like about a lot of these undrafted rookies, Barry, is smart. The focus is there. The hunger is there. It's like a dog with a bone who hasn't eaten for a week. You're not getting it back. You're not getting it out of his mouth. And that's the same mentality that you get from Quentin Bell to Ethan Bonner. I mean, they went week to week, practice squad. They got to hustle to eat and keep their NFL careers alive. And when you have that mentality week to week to week to week, see what happens when you put them in a starting spot. Let's see what happens. Like, you're not getting that starting spot back from Quentin Bell. It's just not. I don't see how it happens.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I think what's been impressive about him, and the new outside linebackers coach Ryan Crow talked about it today, was not only the mentality he has, which is the first thing Crow mentioned, but also there is a physical skill set there that shows you he's not the journeyman player that maybe people considered him. He didn't play many defensive snaps for Tampa, played in Atlanta previously as well. So he's got an NFL skill set. I want to drop a couple other nuggets on cornerback before we move on from my conversation.
Give me some nuggets, Barry.
So he said Nick Needham still cross-training at safety and at corner, but he said he's very much in the mix for the nickel corner job. He's competing with Kader Kohou there. So if Kohou doesn't play well, Nick Needham might regain his old role from 2000, 2001. Obviously, Ramsey's going to play in nickel. They're going to move him around. Anthony Weaver's not going to be as stubborn as Vic Fangio is. He's going to maximize Ramsey as a Swiss Army knife. I think of the undrafted corners, Jason Maitre, the kid from Wisconsin, I think has been the most impressive of the three. You like how Isaiah Johnson moves, the Syracuse rookie? He made a play today, and Storm Duck has looked better, the former Louisville and NC State player. So there's a chance one of those three could emerge as this year's version of Kohou or Needham. I would say less than 50% chance, not out of the question. One other quick cornerback note. I think it's unfair for people who have reacted to this Cam Smith injury as saying, oh, he's another bust. Cam Smith is not at the point that Channing Tindall is now, or Ezukam is now. Cam Smith deserves time. He's going to be back in August, as Mike McDaniel said. He did suffer an injury, but talking to the cornerback coach today, he said the reason why you want to invest time in Cam Smith is because, quote, he is so natural at everything he does with being a defensive back. It comes so natural to him. The way he sees the game is through a natural defensive back lens. He plays with anticipation. He can play calm within his technique to look on the other side of the ball, see what they're telling him, and can make plays off that. That's always going to give him an advantage. And again, I'm quoting the new cornerbacks coach who replaced Sam Madison talking about Cam Smith. He said his footwork, his transition skills, his ball skills, the confidence he has, all of that comes naturally. We're very eager to see that, and he has a future. So I say people who are frustrated with Cam Smith getting injured, give the kid time. You have to give it at least another year. Obviously, you'd love to see him in preseason. We're not sure if we will or not, but I would say giving up on Cam Smith way premature. So that's me on my soapbox today. Has Cam shown you enough last year and early in camp this year to make you think they might have a player there, Omar?
I haven't seen enough. I just haven't seen enough. And even in OTAs, he was nursing an injury. Haven't seen enough. And at this point, I'm not ready to give up on him. I do notice that there's a maturity issue, but I'm not counting on him. And that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Hopefully he is back by September. Though I think it's pretty much a soft tissue injury because we don't see a sleeve, we don't see a brace, so that hints that there was no scope done. And hopefully he gets time and opportunity to showcase what he can do when he's fully healthy. I don't want him out there 70% healthy because we both know he's on this roster. Get him fully healthy, get him ready for the season, and then we'll see where that takes us. Speaking of guys who are fully healthy, Raheem Mostert is one of the many veterans who are on a maintenance program. While Raheem dresses every day, sometimes he gets carries, sometimes he doesn't. He's standing out there in the heat. He doesn't go inside the building like Tyreek. He could if he wanted to, but Raheem works every single day. He's the guy that plays with a chip on his shoulder. He knows Devon Achane and Jalen Wright. They want his job. They want his role. He's been here before. How many mentors has he mentored under him? Guys who are trying to take his job. This year is no different. He was pleasantly surprised that he was rated a top 100. Well, no, he wasn't. He felt slighted how low he was, but he did make it in the top 100. I would make the argument that there is no back other than Christian McCaffrey who had a better statistical season than Raheem Mostert last year. Everybody says it's the system, it's the scheme, it's the offensive line. Then they want to chip away at all of those things. How about Raheem is just actually good? He had a great run today. Couple good runs today. Javon Holland, we think that was a Javon Holland forced fumble and fumble recovery. The one thing I did take note about from Raheem and asked him about was the leadership that's begun to come primarily from Tua. He's always been a leader, but now he is calling people out. He's holding people accountable. I was out there when I heard I didn't hear all of it, but I heard the 10-minute speech from Jalen Ramsey, which was basically, we want to be bullies. We don't need this whole soft. Jalen takes it very personal that the team he's on has a soft reputation. And Raheem talked about how Jalen has encouraged the Dolphins players to talk trash to one another. And I saw some of that where Devon Achane dropped the pass because he heard footsteps from Javon Holland. And after the play, Javon Holland grabs his hands and starts checking it to examine it to make sure that there's nothing wrong. I was like, oh, man, we talking crap like that? And the thought process is that this is going to help this team, 1, build a closer bond, 2, hold each other more accountable, and 3, just overall help them get that edge that they need. And here's Raheem.
See what they do day in and day out. Starting with Calais, he's a savvy vet. Year 17, age 44, going into a great career, and he just brings a lot of juice and energy
at his stature. You know, the guy's he's built like a tank, and you see him on the field, especially me as a running back, and I'm breaking huddle, and I got to line up against this guy. You know, it only makes me get, you know, more confidence in the O-line, and same thing with the O-lineman. You know, they see him and they're like, oh yeah, this guy, we gotta strap it up, especially the caliber that he is. And then, you know, you got Tyreek, who's, I mean, Tim's just always going to be a playmaker, no matter what's going on, no matter what team he's on. He's always bringing that juice and that energy. And then, you know, you got Ramsey. Man, I've been blessed to play against him when we were at the NFC West for so many years, and I know that type of guy. I know exactly what he's exactly going to bring each and every game. And he gave a speech a couple days ago, and he was just basically telling everybody, you know, it's okay to trash talk each other in practice. It's just going to build our character up, build our brotherhood up, and when, you know, we face other opponents, you got to have that dog mentality. And he's been able to bring that mentality day in and day out. So to have those three guys, you know, especially at their caliber and what they've been able to do, man, it just brings along, you know, potential Hall of Famers within the team, and it's really fun.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Raheem. I don't think it's going to take an injury for Achane to take that backfield role from him. We all know Mike McDaniel plays favorites. Raheem is one of his favorites. Hell, Raheem calls him Mikey. So they go back a long way back to their San Francisco 49er days, and it's not like we've seen much drop off from Raheem Mostert. Barry, let me end the podcast with this. We've seen 8 days of practice. The practice in Hard Rock is going to be the 9th. I don't expect to see a significant amount of work showcased. I think we're going to get a lot. I think we're going to get a lot of Mike White and a lot of Skylar Thompson. What is it that you want to see heading into week 3?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a couple. I want to see a better Tier Tart, because when they signed him, I told you I felt good about it. He's a guy who stopped the run at his best in Tennessee, and he's just letting Benito Jones beat him out for this job. Where's the Tier Tart, who I was on his train talking about how he was going to upgrade this defense, he was going to replace Raekwon Davis, and here you have Benito Jones walking in and really beating Tart to this point by an appreciable amount. I want to see that change. I want to see
they want consistency from him. They see flashes. Yeah. But they do not see consistency. They do, you know how coaches are, where it's like, okay, you're going to show up for one play. Do you remember Jordan Phillips? Jordan Phillips did that too. Yes. Where it's like, hey, I'll play hard this play, but I made a play today, so I'm going to take the rest of practice off. Not Jordan Phillips.
I want to see that. I want to see guard play. We talked to Liam today. He said that he really feels like his NFL future is at right guard and playing backup center as well. He made clear how much starting is important to him in a contract year. And so I want to see consistent guard play from Rob Jones and from Liam, with Driscoll being weaved in there as well, at least until Isaiah Wynn gets back. I think this is Liam's last real opportunity to win a starting job and show that he's not just a utility guy, but someone who should be counted on as an NFL starter. I think right guard is the correct spot for him for that. And I want to see more from some of the kids, not only Chop Robinson setting the edge, but I want to see more from Malik Washington. As a 5th-round pick, who's one of the nation's leaders in receptions last year, I talked to Malik alone for a little bit today, Omar. He is very disappointed in his play. He says, this is not what the Miami Dolphins saw on tape when they drafted me. I have to be better. He was a little better today. He caught a pass from Mike White, who to me outplayed Skylar Thompson today, which hasn't usually been the case. So I want to see more from Malik Washington. Not that they're counting on him as a top 5 receiver. It's probably going to be Berrios 4 and Craycraft 5, but you would just like to see a little bit more, as you would like to see more from Chop Robinson and Kamara setting the edge too. Kamara's had some good moments in the pass rush. Paul has improved, but I'd like to generally see more from the draft class, not because you're counting on any of them except for Chop Robinson, particularly this year, but because you just want to see growth. So those would be 3 things that come to my mind. How about you?
Oh, man. For me, it's about these backup quarterbacks, and I can't call it. It's not a competition, but it is a competition. You know, there's so much rotating. You know what I want to see, Barry, and I asked Skylar about this, and I truly do mean it. We saw Skylar thrive when he had a unit of Eric Uzukama, River Craycraft, and I can't remember which one, or Tanner Connor. Yes. That was his unit. That was his group. Those guys, and I believe it was Savon Ahmed. And that unit, man,
On wheel routes. Yes.
yeah, that unit was good. And I don't want to stack the deck in Skyler's favor. Let's split up these units. Let's assign a unit to a quarterback. Let's give him a running back. Let's give him a receiver. Let's give him a tight end. And unless starters go down, let's have it, whether they work with a second team line or the third team time, let's allow them to develop a little bit of chemistry with their unit. These are their guys. These are their receivers. And I understand, Tua needs some reps with River. Tua needs some reps with Jalen Wright, or Jalen Wright has to take handoffs from him. And I get that. But and then with Tanner, some days he's working in Jonnu Smith's role, some days he's not. I get all of that. But let's give them some units so they can get some continuity, because I think everybody who watches practice would say what we're seeing from the backup quarterbacks is not good right now. And I'm not putting all of the blame on them. I think the lines that they work with, maybe the caliber of the defense that they're going against, maybe it's, the wide receivers that running the right routes, running the wrong routes. All of these sound like excuses to me, and they are. But we need to see better quarterback plays from the 2 and the 3.
Yeah, White was encouraging today. To me, Skyler's been the better quarterback so far. I found it interesting real quickly, Omar, when I asked Skyler Thompson today, has Mike McDaniel given you any indication if the job is genuinely open? He says, we've never discussed it. So at least until further notice, I don't think the job is open. It's Mike White. He would have to be just horrific, I think, to allow a window for Skyler Thompson to possibly sneak through.
Skyler would have to outplay him.
Dramatically. I think dramatically, not just by a little.
Because I would argue to you that Skyler might have outplayed him last year, but it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. He needs to do it by a lot. I don't want to say the decks are stacked, but the decks are kind of stacked.
Yeah.
At least in my view.
Yeah. So, but it's not about who wins the job. I just want them to start to develop continuity so that we can get a better sense of what's going on offensively. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, thank you for watching the Miami Herald's Dolphins in Depth. We will be back tomorrow to recap the practice at Hard Rock Stadium. It's not a scrimmage.
Not a scrimmage.
Not a scrimmage. Not a scrimmage at all. So hopefully you're checking out the Miami Herald's website, where we've got daily practice reports. How many words today, Barry?
Over 1,000 on practice, and then we have a couple other stories up as well, and more to come.
We want to make you seem like you're there at practice, even though you're at your job, working, giving your boss a good 9 to 5, and hopefully stealing some time reading some Miami Herald stories and Miami Herald and listening to the Miami Herald podcast. On that note, we are out. We will see you tomorrow.